Hello, guys. This is the first episode, technically, of Furs and Fiends. So what we're going to do, because the core group is James and Nova, um, I thought it'd be kind of cool to kind of do like a sort of meet the insert character and also get something quick to put out at the same time. So today, this is going to be kind of like a very short but a little lead-in session to why they're where at why they're at where they're at when we actually get rolling. So I guess we'll just go ahead and get started before I'll introduce this like setting and everything. But James, why don't you tell everybody like who you are?
I'm a meerkat. Just a meerkat folk. I'm like a smuggler from somewhere land. I didn't really plan that far ahead.
Okay, so what the deal is we are on a custom world. This is not going to take place in any existing Dungeons and Dragons land. I'm using 5th edition as a core. There's going to be a lot of customization. Obviously, this is set in a furry anthropomorphic world. Yes, there are dwarves and elves and all kinds of things. This particular continent is pretty much anthro only. Dragon folk are the Dragonborn. They go by different names. All the other fantasy races, including humans on other continents, will know them as Dragonborn. That's what they know them as. They might have other terms here, but they are the same race. And we are on a continent known as Astana, which is, it basically translates in one of the oldest tongues, the oldest version of the common language in this world, means Little Asta, and the world itself is called Asta, so that's why A-S-T-A, so that's hence the name. And we are in a little, kind of like low hills, mountainy village known as Whiteleaf Village, which sounds a lot like a Pokemon town. And the map that you see here, I just realized that I have my whole screen. I meant to go to full screen. I will do that now. Because this intro sessions are going to be heavily RP based, we're going to roll if it needs it, but like we're going to basically try to avoid combat because, kind of draws things out. And this is just kind of meant to be a little like prologue. So right here, what you see is just kind of like the outskirts of the village. Up on the top right is kind of like a town hall kind of thing. It's a very large kind of oak manor, lots of well-polished wood, and like a lot of ski resort kind of things. You know, you see they have even the nicer buildings are a little bit worn, but they're still well-maintained. That's the kind of thing you're seeing with that. Down there, you have kind of an old West in layout. There's a lot of, especially Eastern United States kind of, what you call it, like avenues and stuff. And Old West general main streets are kind of the same thing. You have a lot of very symmetrical paths on that main road that have little shops and buildings and whatnot. Up there above them, to the north a little bit, is a main fountain. That's pretty much it. It's just a little decorative fountain, but it has nice pure water in it, surrounded by lampposts and a number of stalls. The stalls, at this time of day, it's kind of like you're looking at about basically noon, maybe a little bit before noon. So they kind of have some people, but most of what you're seeing is going to be like some fruit vendors, maybe a couple snacks like a toasted rat or breads, maybe some sweet breads, that kind of thing, some drinks. But it's not very heavily populated. This town, Whiteleaf, it's more of like a community. They don't really focus too much on imports and exports and that kind of thing. They just kind of get by. There's fishing because they have creeks and rivers nearby and stuff. But for the most part, it's kind of like a dwelling for the people that live there. They are pretty heavily used as a stop between for travelers and other people who are coming and going, merchants coming and going. Because this town, Whiteleaf, it actually is kind of like, I was describing it to James off camera, but it's kind of like an Orion's belt is how I describe it. You have down here in the southeast, relatively speaking. Do I have the map up still? I do. Okay. So this is the Alornia Empire right here. This is going to be where we're starting. This is the nation, the kingdom that we're going to be starting in. This is the continent of Astana. Right here is Shifford. That is the capital city of the Alornia Empire. And way down here, roughly on this side of the river, is another major city, which may or may not be gotten to. And then just a little bit down southeast from that. But anyway, so yeah, you kind of got like these guys. You got like one right here, and then two kind of closer up to each other up there. So a lot of it kind of follows the contour of the landscape and the rivers, as much of medieval times and whatnot do. The earliest roads and everything, of course, it makes sense. You work with what you have. James, Nebula, the wee little meerkat. I keep thinking otter because that was the base that we had, but you were a meerkat.
Okay, I'm less than 3 feet tall.
he is very, very small. And at first I thought that might be a problem until I remembered that at one point I wanted to, I was going to say cosplay. I wanted to RP as a sprite, I believe it was, and my brother was having none of that, so.
That would have been real tiny.
Now that I'm a DM again, I am in charge, and I am totally cool with that. So, yeah, he's very small. You said it was approximately 2 feet, right?
2 feet 10 inches on the sheet.
Okay, there you go. Almost 3 feet.
Yeah.
Which is not so bad, actually. That's actually fairly reasonable when you encounter, like, gnomes and stuff.
Yeah.
Nebula has been passing through because what you know is that since you're not a rogue in the traditional sense where you kind of think of the shady or shifty kind of guys, it's more of your skill set. When I was playing a one-on-one with Nori, it was very much the same kind of thing. You're a rogue in how you use your skills, not like your profession. You are not a thief. But you would be capable as one. You would be good as, an assassin, whatever. Anything that would require a degree of stealth and cunning and more intelligent combat. And so you befriend a lot of the same kind of people. And again, similarly, your friends are often along those kinds of lines. Being interested in kind of the tinkering, the engineering, and kind of your fascination with black powder and how the machinery works for explosives and like complex like bows and crossbows and stuff. You have a couple like it's a friend of a friend kind of thing. Thought you might be interested actually in a group of people up in another city up to the northeast, is the one between the capital and this one, which is Highstone City. He is suggesting that you head there because he recommended a group of people. He wrote it down in like a note to you, basically, just kind of vague directions that tell you where to go, how to follow, what roads. It's taken you through here so far, and you were supposed to meet a contact in here who will eventually kind of, basically he'll have something for you. And so right now you're basically right here. You're in the sort of loose town square, maybe hovering around the fountain, whatever might strike your fancy. And I guess we'll go from there. What would you like to do to start?
Do I have a name or description of the character I'm looking for?
You are... Yes, let me find it. He said the name that you're looking for is Asher.
Asher, huh?
And I actually didn't write down his race. Oh no!
Oh.
Quick fix.
Tarrasque.
Yeah, he's a Tarrasque. No, he's an Anthro-Tarrasque. That's a catch.
Yeah.
You are looking for a coyote named Asher. The only thing you really know about him, I mean, like I mentioned, these people aren't like terribly shady and suspicious and stuff, but at the same time, there's a certain amount of discretion involved. What you find kind of interesting is the fact that you feel the way they've talked about this before you were kind of pointed in this direction in general in the first place, is that this could be leading to more than just like a simple job. It could actually be leading to something much more interesting that would really catch your eye. So what you do know is that there is a, kind of sandy, sable-furred coyote, anthro. I'm for the sake of it, I'm probably just going to be using their animals. Just assume that they're anthropomorphic unless I say otherwise. I mean, searching for an actual coyote in a woodland village might be a little needle in the haystack. But yeah, so you're looking for one. You can safely assume that he's probably going to have more like a style of garb and attitude and everything, kind of more along the lines of your type of character, where you're basically more normal. Like, people wouldn't really look at you twice. If you're wearing like heavy plate mail coming through this kind of village, you might raise not suspicion, but you're definitely going to catch some glances, and people like, oh, he's either an adventurer or there's some serious business going on right now. So yeah, that's what you do know. You do know that you're looking for one. Nothing terribly exceptional about him. Again, kind of makes sense for your general kind of people. Hello, Luke. My little dog is here, but I'm not going to lift him because I have gaming stuff on the table. I'm going to be using my Yogscast High Rollers Dead Reckoning dice because they're limited edition and they roll well, and you guys won't be seeing my rolls. It is important for a DM. I'm fair, though. Anyway, so yeah, you're looking for a coyote man named Asher. I almost read the wrong name off the sheet just in glancing. And I think it would be pretty common sense to kind of know the general hangouts that you would expect. Either somewhere where they would like know that you would look. So I mean, like in this instance, the fountain would be pretty reasonable for meeting someone. Maybe if there's a store, if you want to go check out that like avenue of shops, could be something there that might suit a rogue's need.
Is this the whole city?
No.
Is, or is this just a portion?
No, this is just a kind of portion of it. It's actually, a lot of times you think of having like the fountain and that kind of thing kind of in the town center. This is actually kind of close to the northeast. The road out of town is just south of those those shops down there.
Okay.
There's a little bit more, but it's mostly just kind of assorted random housing for the actual citizens.
Gotcha.
So yeah, the fountain and stuff, it kind of acts like a town square, but it's by no means in the center of the village.
I guess I'll start by asking around. I guess I'm starting at the fountain, right?
Yeah, so you'll be around the fountain. I mean, you can pretty much start anywhere there. You got some, like I mentioned, not all of the stalls are occupied by, little, like, staff people, whatever. But there's a good few of them. Most of them have people working. You got a few people walking here and there. Again, mostly it's day-to-day stuff just because it's more of a community rather than, like, a commerce city or anything. If you're interested in asking someone who might know like where they hang out, you might be interested in going to like a tavern or something. Yeah, there's probably only one in this city or town. Or you could just kind of wander around and kind of keep an eye out for the coyote guy, for Asher.
I was just gonna start asking people.
Okay.
The stalls.
You want to just go to the stall? As you approach, I don't know, let's say... Okay, that one, yeah, that works. Actually, that's the one I was thinking of. As you approach, there's kind of like a squirrel lady working. A lot of these kinds of ones sort of become a little harder to distinguish. Ultimately doesn't really matter, but she's kind of got like chestnut fur. The tail is very poofy. That's one way you can tell she's got like the very iconic, big, poofy squirrel tail. And she is selling sweetbreads and, well, actually just really breads of any kind, but there's a lot of the sweetbreads out right now. There's a number of like children around, but not many. Most of them are with parents if they're out at all. And as you approach, she just kind of gestures to her wares and kind of says like, "Hi, would you like something? I've got plenty here for sale. We got cheaper little rolls. Got some sweetbreads for a little bit more, but they're very good."
Hello. I like what you're selling. but I'm actually looking for a friend. I'm new to this town. You see, I'm looking for a coyote. Coyote. His name's Asher. Have you heard of him? Have you seen him around anywhere?
I don't think we really have any who are native to here, but I think I've seen one. Where did I see one? She sits there kind of thinking for maybe like 10 seconds. It takes a while. She's obviously it's that she has that expression on her face where she knows that she recognizes it. Um and she's just trying to think because it's pretty clear that she's being honest. You're looking at townsfolk right now. They're not really going to be terribly invested in lying to you.
Yeah.
And then she finally says, I do think that there was one coyote walking around town somewhere earlier. I think he might be down in the shops. It could have been maybe over at the inn. I haven't seen him around here at the fountain for a while, so, I mean, if it was even here that I saw him. So he might be down at the shops or maybe the tavern if you want to go take a look there.
Excellent. Oh, and while I'm here, you got any like walnuts or chestnuts or anything?
She kind of
Something to snack on?
she kind of shuffles around, looks around, and she pulls out a little roll. It's a pretty small one, but it's got like, you know how if you go to, like some bakers will have like walnuts or chestnuts, that kind of thing. Like they kind of chop them up and have them kind of sprinkled on top.
Mm.
It's like that. You can see. I wish I had the best example. If I had a picture, it'd make sense. Um, it's basically like a nut bread where the bread itself has it. You can tell the color's just a little bit different, and then it's got it accented on the top. And she says, got a couple of these.
Ooh, that looks mighty tasty. How much?
Uh, 2 copper? Nah, 1 copper. They're
What?
not that expensive to make.
Sold.
All right.
Take 2.
Don't even worry about marking off the copper.
I was gonna like. All right.
I has bread.
I has bread. Right. Well, thank you kindly. I'm gonna go set out to find this coyote.
All right.
Again.
Good luck finding your friend.
Thank you.
All right.
So I head off. She said an inn, or I guess I'll start with the inn.
Okay, so yeah, the inn will be kind of like, I mean, off again for the sake of having a visual. This is kind of just the map that you see. The inn will be off to the east, so it'll be off the map. But if you want to make your way there, you can make your way there. The town you can see as you're walking through. There's a lot of herbivore evolved species of anthro here. You do get a few. There are a few, like wolf people, kind of like the typical ones you think of. Maybe a fox person here or there, but it's mostly you see a lot of deer and actually a pretty good amount of squirrel folk are here. Judging by the location, it makes a lot of sense, like if you were to stop and think about it, because it's very reminiscent of kind of what you would think of with like a woodlands, especially kind of like a low, like foothills of mountains kind of thing.
Yeah.
Up ahead, you see what is pretty clearly an inn. Like I mentioned before, a lot of the buildings here are mostly just houses kind of spread about in a community, in like a little communal, kind of area.
Yeah.
The shops do seem to be kind of stuck in their own place, but the inn kind of sits. The inn itself is almost like the center of town. Like I mentioned, how the fountain, which is typically thought of to be one of those features you have in the middle, the inn here kind of acts like that, which makes a lot of sense when you consider the fact that this town does kind of act as a pretty big stopping point for merchants and other travelers. And so you're looking at kind of, it's actually 3-story. Like this is for the area especially, and the kind of population here where it's not really a terribly big one. You got a pretty big 3-story inn. And you can tell that there's like a kind of tavern on the bottom level, and then all the rooms are up above. So yeah, you can just approach that if you want to go in.
Yeah. I'll just go in.
Okay, as you go in, you see a lot of the same thing, except for here, it's the whole trade aspect is a lot more evident. You see more species, not necessarily carnivores, but you see a lot more that you wouldn't expect to see here. Like you do see a couple of bird people kind of sitting off on their own. You got like kind of like a red parrot, kind of green, what you would assume to be parrot species. Over on one side, you do see a couple of maybe weasels or ferrets. You can't really tell that readily because once you go inside, the lighting is a bit lower because obviously you lose a lot of natural light. They have the windows open, obviously, at this time of day, which does a pretty good amount, but it's still a lot lower, especially with the contrast. There's really no music right now. But the talk there's a pretty good amount of talk, and it actually kind of surprises you how many people are here, because the inn is by no means full right now, especially since it usually isn't. They kind of just have it that big just in case, because sometimes they get, harvest seasons and stuff when you get trade going a lot more. But the inn, like the tavern side, the tavern part itself on the bottom floor, has a pretty good amount of people in it. Why don't you go ahead and actually roll me a perception just for like a first glance?
Perception is plus. There's no number there, so I just rolled a d20.
Yeah, and then if there's any, ooh.
I have no eyes.
Apparently not. I was gonna say, yeah, if you have any bonuses, I'm not sure if you have any proficiencies in it or anything. I don't think you do.
Perception based on, is that wisdom? Or, not wisdom, is it?
Here, let me actually, never mind. Well, it'll say on your sheet. You'll have it checked off somewhere if it is.
Yeah, it's not checked off, but usually there's like a number that shows what you add to it as a base.
Okay, actually, what's your passive perception? I think it's passive wisdom or whatever it's called. Okay, yeah. So as you're looking around, you kind of do you want to like approach the bar, or do you want to kind of just take a glance around?
Glance around first, make sure like I don't want to miss him if he's sitting there waiting for me.
Okay. What you do see, it doesn't look like he's trying to hide or anything, but you see him definitely out of the way. There is someone that does seem to match the description. Not, again, not very shifty or anything. He's just kind of got darker clothes, not like black and kind of stereotypical, but like you think maybe a dark green or even maybe a blue. From here, it's kind of hard to tell. But they appear to be just kind of cloth. He's got like a vest over a longer sleeve shirt of either the same color or almost the same color, long pants, but you can see that he's kind of got like his tail is sticking out and it's kind of hanging out through the back of the chair. And you can see the very distinctive kind of thinner long snout and that light colored fur. He doesn't have any headgear on or anything. He's just kind of sitting in the back, and it looks like he's keeping an eye out, and he kind of like catches your glance as well. Obviously paying attention to the people coming and going.
Gotcha. I guess like as I see him, I like gesture like as if I know that he sees me and I see him, and I start to walk over there.
Okay. He sees you and kind of gives you a nod. It looks like he does. Basically, if someone were to see this going on, it would look like he knew you.
Gotcha.
Not like you're necessarily like a friend or anything, like a close friend or something, but like definitely somebody that you know. So you're just gonna approach?
Yeah, just go up to him.
All right,
be
cool.
like, "Hey, partner, expecting anyone?"
And he looks up at you and he kind of just like, so he kind of gives you like a little wave and like a like you put up your hand and just kind of move your hand with your wrist. And he's like,
Yeah.
"Hey there, so I'm gonna assume you're what, Nebula?"
That's right.
Yeah, okay. Here, why don't you have a seat?
How tall is he? Before I go off, is he like 5'10" or something?
Well, yeah, it's a little hard to tell. I mean, definitely taller than you. A lot of people are going to be taller than you.
I think most people will be.
Yeah, but like, I mean, again, because he's sitting down right now, so
yeah,
it's kind of hard to judge. He doesn't look to be compared to a lot of the others, and when you consider, especially in here at the moment, there's a lot of different species, like I mentioned, the bird people and all these other people. It's kind of difficult to really judge the scale. Um, from where his shoulders and head sit above the top of the chair, though, um, he doesn't strike you as that tall. Like, he doesn't strike you as particularly short for the typical anthro, but he is probably on the low end of average from what you would be able to really kind of just on what you're seeing.
Gotcha.
So yeah, he gestures for you to sit. He offers you a seat.
Yeah, I take his offer.
All right. So I friend of a friend, we'll say, has kind of mentioned that you might be looking for not necessarily work, but interests and avenues that might help you with certain things you're interested in. In particular, I hear you're quite fond of certain technologies.
Yeah. Most things mechanical I'd be interested in. If it explodes, I'll be on it.
He kind of gives you that like kind of coyote, like very very what you commonly expect with like coyotes and that like little like like it's a quiet one. Obviously, he's not like guffawing, but you get that kind of like kind of laugh to himself.
Yeah.
And he's like, "Okay, I thought so. I have a bit of a plan. I was talking with a couple of the guys back, I guess, at your home, and I do have something that might be of interest. And I don't want to. I guess it depends on how far out of the way you're willing to go for it, because there is someone else I could introduce you to. You'll have to go. I'm going to stay here, by the way. But if you want to go meet someone, it could actually show you something pretty cool. Apparently, do you know much about the lakes north of Shifford? If you want to, go ahead and roll a d20. Give me a history check if you have any bonuses for history.
Let's see, history. No.
Okay, so it'll just be a d20.
Just a d20. Hey, I know all about this.
Apparently you do. Okay, so what you know is that the Alornia Empire, obviously, as you saw on the map, it's quite well established. It's one of the oldest empires and one of the oldest civilizations, like, established. This is not one that's ruled by any specific race or anything. This is one that's been around for a very long time. Think of it kind of like the United States. It has a long history with many different people that have kind of come together. What you know about the lakes in particular is that they used to be, it's kind of like how you have, there have been different places that have, over the millions and millions of years of Earth's history, obviously, you have different places that have maybe flooded or not flooded, like some deserts and stuff used to be underwater, that kind of thing. Those lakes actually used to not have as much water. And there's some islands in there that used to basically be mountains. A lot of this area used to be much taller in elevation, as the world was going through the warming up phase of the end of an ice age. And so a lot of those ice blocks and ice glaciers and all kinds of stuff eventually ended up filling it. So a lot of the, still very frosty mountains here in the higher elevations, but a lot of it ended up becoming big lakes and that kind of thing. That's why you have those massive lakes there. And you do know, especially with the 20, that there was a lot of aspects of the previous civilizations, the long lost ones that weren't either hadn't been excavated or anything yet, as well as just kind of, different things that have been lost there. It's because of the size of them, it's kind of like how you have the Great Lakes. There's just, that there are going to be storms that can easily capsize things and that kind of thing, capsize ships, and there could be anything there. My connection to the server has been interrupted, apparently. Are you still there?
I'm still here.
Okay. So, yeah, you do know that it is basically, if you could go out of the way to find the stuff, there is probably a whole lot of interesting lost things deep beneath the water. And so what he basically, I assume you're just going to kind of relay that that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Rather than ask you to repeat everything. Okay, so he's like, see, now I have a friend. This is actually where I come into play. I have a friend of my own who it makes a lot of sense why he'd be here. Now he's a sailor, and so that might strike people as not suspicious, but a little bit weird when you're this far inland. But the thing is that those lakes, I mean, he knows more or less what I know. He's got some information. I've got some information. I'm more of the enterprising. I kind of like to take care of the paperwork, as we could say. A lot of the information gathering, that kind of thing. I would do this myself. I'm not really that fond of all the water. Now, he has more information than I do. Let me put it that way, because he has come across some things, but he wanted someone to kind of help him out, but someone he can trust, and he knows he can trust me. He also knows that this is not really my kind of area of expertise when it comes to getting your hands dirty. If you're interested, I think that there will be some things of great interest to you down there. There are some particular spots that will help certain interests that you've kind of told me about, and getting you kind of rolling with them again. I think in particular, certain mechanical aspects, I believe that there are some more intricate, like clockwork and finely crafted mechanics, that kind of thing. So from what you've mentioned, it seems like that might be up your alley.
It does sound like catches my interest. My line of work takes me quite far and wide, so I'd say that this would be easy enough.
Okay.
Couldn't say water's really my favorite, being a meerkat and all, but heck with it, let's do it.
And he kind of looks around, but then he brings his gaze back and he says, "Well, I mean, I don't really know if it'd be too offensive or not, but you're also quite small, so at least you have a better chance of floating."
True.
So should we do business? Should I give you his information?
Yeah.
Okay. So.
That's exactly how I'd say it.
Yeah. All right. He says, what you'll want to do is you'll want to go into Highstone City. I don't know exactly where he'll be in there. He probably won't be too hard to find as long as you walk around enough. He does, since, being a sailor is his profession. It's what he does as a trade. Him and the crew that he serves on, they're not I don't really know the best way to put it. It's, I guess, an archaeological group. The term pirate gets thrown around a lot just because of their style and that kind of thing, but they are more scholarly than they are anything else. But they do know how to defend themselves. But again, that being said, he's going to be pretty easy to spot just because you'll probably be able to see his nautical garb. He's got a long coat, and honestly, that's probably enough. You're not going to find too much of that this far inland. He is also he's an iguana man. He's of the iguana people, the ones that live. I don't know. I don't really deal with lizards that much and reptile folk. Dealt with some turtle people before, but he just kind of almost trails off internally. It looks like he kind of has a look of contemplation on his face as he kind of tilts his head away for a second, and then he remembers that he's actually talking to you. And he's like, "Oh yeah." Anyway, but yeah. So there's an iguana named Christ Tidefang, and he should be pretty easy to spot. Like I said, he's got a long sailing coat, and his scales will be very kind of like a lime green, I guess, more like a lime or a grassy kind of green. You probably won't have too much trouble finding him with that alone. Just let him know that I sent you. Let him know that Asher sent you. You're a friend of mine, and you guys can probably just talk it out from there, I guess.
Sounds like a plan.
As for my payment, of course, anything he finds, there will be a little reward given back, assuming anything interesting comes up. But don't have to worry about it too much.
Alright, let's do this.
Cool.
Is there any other information I should know?
Don't think so. Actually, let me. And he starts kind of rummaging through like his pockets and stuff, and then he pulls out like a. It almost looks like a keychain. Obviously, in a fantasy setting, you don't really have that kind of thing, so it's probably like a talisman or just kind of like a decorative little charm thing. Yeah, like that kind of thing. But it kind of looks like it might be hung from maybe a belt or like even a weapon or a walking stick or something like that. Just kind of one of those things where it's out of the way.
Yeah.
And it's like a little. It's a tooth of some kind. You can't really tell what kind it would be. It's more of a sharp tooth, but not like it's a shark's or anything like that. It's more of a canine. But discerning what kind you wouldn't really be able to without extensive, painstaking research. And he kind of hands that over to you and says, "This actually might be a little bit better. It's it's nothing really expensive or special or anything, but it is something archaeological. We had that together, so as long as you tell him this stuff, show him this, should be good. Might make it easier."
That does sound like it would make it easier.
Okay, well,
Alright.
if that's it, what time is it? He looks out the window, kind of leans. Not too much time has passed. Because of how small the village is, you didn't really have to worry about, trudging through streets after street after street and, swaths of people to go through. Maybe like an hour between talking to
The squirrel.
the squirrel vendor and kind of just looking around, because you did also go straight to the inn, so
Yeah.
it's maybe approaching 1 on the dot.
Okay.
And he leans back in. You might be able to make it to Highstone by evening. I don't know if you want to leave right now or if you want to start off tomorrow, but shouldn't take too long.
The sooner the better, I'd say. I have my rations.
All right, well, I guess say hi to Asher for me, and if you find anything cool, see if you can find me and let me know.
Will do, Mr.
I'm sorry, no, he is Asher. Say hi to Christ.
Oh, this guy's Asher.
Yeah, this guy's Asher. Christ Tidefang is the iguana you're looking for.
Gotcha.
I'll write that out just so it's a little better, because the name is kind of...
Mr. Asher.
Oh, wow. Oh, no, okay. I was like, did I really say Christ? No. It is literally Christ.
Gotcha.
And yes, I am Bat God now. Okay, so yeah. That's pretty much it. You have pretty much everything you started with, plus a little nut roll.
Yes. That's not good.
You have your information. What do you want to do?
I just head straight in. I'm not really one to dawdle.
Okay, so you want to basically start on the road then?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to do a couple quick checks. Okay. Because like I said, it's not that far. Close. Okay. So basically you make it there, no trouble. Weather's pretty good right now. There appears to have been a little bit of maybe there's some winds or something recently, because there were a couple spots very close together where it looks like there was a small landslide, like a little tree had uprooted. So nothing that actually really affects you, just kind of delayed the time just a little bit. But you basically get there about the normal time. You're on foot. It's probably approaching like 5:40, 6:20.
Okay.
That general time frame. It's kind of like California, east or west coast right now in general, where the light is actually kind of lasting for a pretty good amount of time. You can see it was like I mentioned earlier. The white leaf, I think is what I said. I want to make sure I'm saying everything right. Village is, very sparsely populated, that kind of thing. High Stone City, it has walls kind of surrounded like wooden ramparts, but it's not it's not fortified. They resemble those kinds of fortress walls, except for they have big gaps between them. They're more like a loose boundaries as well as a wall that could easily act as a proper defense if needed, but there's also pretty big gaps where there are no walls. It's very clearly meant to kind of be more boundary markers than anything. And there is like a main gate. You can see guards, they're standing around, but they're not performing any actual checks. You do have a couple of carts coming in. Not anything like a big horse-drawn carriage, but you do have a couple like little carts carrying maybe hay or, other assorted bundled goods, that kind of thing. But very clearly from places on nearby trails and paths and stuff, as opposed to necessarily big, merchants coming in. And do you want to just, so before you, as you're approaching, it's kind of like, think of having a fairly wide, a good sized street as, like kind of your dirt path. And then the ramparts, the wooden posts and everything are fairly well set off of that. And the guards are generally sitting around the edges of the walls. So they're not like super rigid, guarding every entrance and checking with people. But they are, keeping an eye on things and just kind of at a general post.
My flintlock or whatever we said on a flintlock, right? That's not gonna raise their eyebrows or anything.
Wait, what?
My pistol or
no.
Do I have that yet?
The little the Derringer, right?
Yeah, Derringer.
Yeah, no, that's also tailored to you. The reason I kind of was talking to you about that is because that's more tailored to your size.
Okay.
So it's still going to do the appropriate damage and stuff. But it's also not going to be like... It wouldn't be like if you gave a... Like, if you give a .22 rifle to, like, a 4-year-old. It's going to be massive in their hands, obviously.
Gotcha.
But if you have... I mean, it's basically like the difference between a kid's, replica toy and an actual rifle.
Yeah, so it's kind of like a reskinned short bow or something. Or whatever the smaller thing is.
Kind of like that. Basically, just all you really need to know is that your weapon is your size.
Gotcha.
So it won't draw too much attention because the real ones are designed, to be easily concealed and carried.
Yeah.
So it's the same thing for you. It's just obviously in fact, it's actually technically advantageous because if somebody bigger tried to get it, they either wouldn't be able to use it or would have trouble.
They'd have some trouble getting their finger into the trigger area.
Yeah.
Alright.
Okay, so you're just gonna enter the city?
Yeah, I'll head on in and look around, maybe see if I notice them or anything.
Okay. As you're going in, you don't really... It's kind of difficult to tell, especially with the fading light. Earthquake. This is much busier. Obviously, it's not like a big city. But there is a pretty good amount of business going on right now. A lot of the shops are closing up just because, like, you don't have the benefit of having, like, really fancy security systems and stuff. You kind of have to stop when you have to stop.
Yeah.
There are, like I said, there are a appropriate amount of guards for the town. And what you do notice is that there are significantly more people. All kinds of different species walking around. You have birds, You do have lizards. There are actually a fair amount of reptilian people here. Um, all kinds. You got there's a lot of different lizard species, which is interesting because discerning like, oh, this is a fox, this is a coyote, whatever. But with the lizards, because there are just so many lizard men here, like you see one off in the distance who has a very kind of like crumpled looking crown around his neck, and it's a frilled lizard. You can tell that it's a part of him, so it's like a frilled lizard man. He's walking around with kind of like a walking cane. He's not old, but he's got like a walking staff, and he's got a very kind of almost like a poncho over him. Yeah. So you see a fair amount of reptilians. You see a pretty good amount of birds. A lot of flightless bird species, anthroforms. You see a couple like what are presumably emu or ostrich, maybe. You see a cassowary. That kind of stuff stands out a lot to you because of the bright blue. And of course, kind of your typical. You see a lot of canids. A lot of you see a few rabbit folk. Walking around. You see if there were actually a few rabbit merchants who are kind of carrying their goods. They have a lot of little jewelry. One of them appears to be a jeweler. He's got like a little box, a little lock box that has some jewel craft stuff on it. You can also see that there's some fancy, not embroidery, but like embellishments on the wood, kind of carved in. It's very, very difficult to see if you can spot a particular person at this time. Go ahead and roll if you want to do another perception to see if you can find him here. Doesn't even necessarily mean he is here, but go ahead and give me a roll. 14.
Yeah.
Okay.
14.
Yeah. Okay. So every now and then you do think you might see somebody that could suit him, like his description, but something's kind of off. Like maybe the color is not right. You do remember he distinctly said he was like kind of like a lime grassy green. So far you haven't seen anyone with anything that looks nautical for clothing.
The guards, I assume, would know a lot more, right? Would that be the last one of them? Because if they're posted somewhere, they would know, or if they're doing their job and paying attention, then they should be able to notice if they see someone who matches the description or not.
Yeah, if you want to go ask someone, you could.
Yeah, so I'll go up to one of the guards.
Okay, it's kind of a generic. A lot of them, they're not heavily armored or anything. They're not obviously not like guarding anything important, but they do have kind of like hide/leather kind of general armor and stuff. They got like a loose cap kind of hovering over his face, and he's just kind of honestly it kind of looks like it helps because even here you kind of lose a lot. You're just kind of standing around. When you're a guard, there's not a whole lot to do besides your job, and when it's uneventful, it's uneventful. So he just he sees you approach and he's like, "Oh, hey, can I help you?"
Yeah, you can. I'm looking for. Such a matter of fact, isn't it? Matter of fact, you can. I'm not from around here. I've been sent on duty for a job I picked up. I'm looking for an iguana fellow by the name of Chris Tidefang. You seen him around here?
He stopped and thinks. Let me roll. Do you know anything about him? Like, maybe, I don't know what his scales look like or what he's wearing?
He should be wearing some nautical clothing, long clothing jacket of some kind.
Oh.
Some brighter color scales.
Give me a minute. Let me roll. Okay. Do you have insight?
Insight. Yeah, I do.
Okay. Give me a roll.
Button 7, I guess that RC insight. Wisdom +1.
And then you have that marked off as a proficiency, right?
It's a skill.
Well, yeah, but you have it checked.
Yeah, it's checked as a proficiency.
Okay, so
I get +10 or Or
Yeah, so it'd be the roll plus proficiency plus the associated bonus.
okay,
So if that's wisdom, it would be 7 plus 1, you said?
yeah,
And then plus your
two
proficiency.
So it'd be a 10.
10. Okay, you... It's kind of hard to tell. Like, it does look like he knows something about the guy. I don't know, it's kind of like... It strikes you that he does recognize him from somewhere. So he kind of looks at you, and this guy is not, like, huge, but compared to you, he's, like, 3 feet taller. And he's like, I forget how I had him talking. He's like, give me a quick minute, actually. I'm going to take a look and see if I can... Somebody knows something. Hang on. And he kind of walks off and kind of walks a little more towards the center of town. What do you want to do while you're waiting?
I don't know. I just look around. Maybe I'll see him while I'm waiting there.
Okay.
What I'm looking for.
All right. So if that's what you want, if that's what you're gonna do, eventually he does come back, and he's actually got someone with him, but it's not Christ. It's another guard, but he looks like he has slightly fancier armor. Like it's not fancy, but you can tell that there's some embroidery and stuff like stitch work to kind of act as sort of a symbol. And he says, "All right, this is the guy, Captain. He's looking for the sailor, I guess." The captain, he's kind of like a stout nose. You can tell he's definitely a wolf of some kind, but he's got a much more stout, shorter snout. Doesn't look particularly mean or anything, but he's definitely, definitely been around. And he says, "Wait, so are you friends with him, or are you just like, why are you looking for this man?"
I'm supposed to be working with him to do some a job I was sent to help with.
Okay, that's interesting. Here, why don't you come with me for now? There's something strange going on right now. We need to figure this out. If you have any kind of relation to this man at all, regardless of if you just met him or are going to be working with him, I'm going to need you to come with me for just a little bit. You're not in any trouble right now, but we kind of need to figure things out, and anybody that is involved in any way would be of help.
Did something happen to him? Or is he in trouble?
No, well, not really. It's not him that's the problem. But it's kind of complicated. There's a connection. And we just want to make sure that everything's going to be okay.
I see. Well, I'd be happy to help.
Okay. So you're just going to kind of go with him?
Yeah.
Okay. So what happens is he leads you, and, actually, go ahead and give me... I mean, you don't really need an insight roll, he seems honest, but if you want to do another insight roll, it's probably a good idea, too. Okay, yeah. I mean, it seems fine. It seems like he's being honest. I mean, you can tell it's kind of like what his intonation and everything described, where it looks like what they know is clearly not all there is. But again, it doesn't look like he's trying to deceive you or anything. But what he does is he leads you. You remember that house, the one on the map, basically what I described as like a nice kind of slightly worn but big kind of town hall looking thing. He kind of leads you to something like that. This one.
Is this not here, or?
Yeah, just kind of as reference, since we left that up just as a background, basically.
Yeah.
Basically, what he does is he does lead you up to that. It's very clearly the guards, like kind of. Like headquarters. It's not a barracks or anything, but it's like the headquarters. All the kind of paperwork gets done. It looks like it does house something relating to the city, management wise, that kind of thing. Might have to do with, I don't know, maybe like if there were to be like military affairs needed for like a bandit attack or anything like that. Excuse me. And he takes you in, and he kind of takes you. You go through a few hallways, and it's it's surprisingly nice. Like, it's not lavish, but you do have fairly nice kind of pale wood walls that have been stained to be kind of like a more like almost like a hazel kind of wood. Like, a lot of care has been taken, but at the same time, it's not like it's over the top. So this is definitely comes off as a very offices kind of thing, like a very managerial type of place. And he takes you into the back, and once you get to the end of the hall, you enter a room, and there's a desk on one side which is empty. There's nobody on the side of the room that has anything looking like they are involved, like, as an employee. And you look around the room, and it's nice. There's a couple paintings, nothing too fancy. Obviously, this is not the paintings that are here are not ones that you in this world would be paying like huge bucks for, but paintings are still pretty important. Like, not important, but it is an unnecessary expense. Not every house is going to have them. And what you find interesting is on the left, you do see a couple other people gathered there as well. You do see kind of a very nervous looking rat fellow. Fairly short. He's actually not much taller than you, maybe by about 1.5 feet. Which, comparatively speaking, is actually pretty close. He's kind of got, not tattered, but very kind of worn down, kind of rough looking charcoal, blackish gray kind of clothing. And next to him, you also see there is a very actually surprisingly small, about your size, a little kiwi person. And she looks kind of annoyed, but not because she's like angry or anything, but it looks like she's just very impatient. Like, she knows that she should be here, but she really just doesn't want to be. And then next to her is actually another bird person with black fur. Yeah, black fur. You gotta watch out for those furry birds. There's a black feathered magpie person wearing kind of roguish clothing as well. And that is where we're gonna have to stop for today. Okay, so hopefully that was okay for you guys to watch. We will be rounding this out a lot better. Just so that everybody knows, I used to do storytelling for Vampire the Masquerade, and then a few other random things, and so I've got the background, but I'm also the kind of person that really needs to warm up. So, I don't know about you, James, but if you or Kaylee or anyone else who might play with us, don't feel too nervous or anything, just because we're all gonna have to pick it up.
Yeah.
We'll get it rolling.
For myself, anyway, I work better when there's more people.
Yeah.
This is actually the first time I've ever really done a serious one-on-one with anyone, so that's kind of part of the awkwardness here. But if there's enough people to get a good conversation going, and I have something to put input into, then it'll go a lot better. That's why I'm so quiet this time. Because of reasons.
Exactly. No, I totally agree. For me in particular, in fact, when it comes to being the game master, like I mentioned for Vampire the Masquerade back in high school, I was our game master for that, and we had a lot of fun with it. But we also had 5 or 6 people excluding me. And I mean, Vampire it's interesting because a lot of people do it more RP based than with combat, even though combat's pretty important in it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I agree. It was the same thing for me. The only other one-on-one that I've ever done was I had there was a private D&D game with Nori because I didn't have anyone else to play with at the time. So we were like, you know what? Why not? Let's go ahead and start one. You can kind of learn at a comfortable pace. So
yeah.
And we started. We actually had a pretty good start too. But yeah, it was the same thing. She was trying to figure out how to really do it that well, just because it was a one-on-one. And as the DM, it's this, it's the same situation for me. Like, I want to try to make the storytelling work, and like you're doing a good job so far. At least I think so. So just it's having the right people and making sure that you can figure out like where you sit. Because once we get, well, obviously Kaylee's gonna have her little prologue story to kind of describe how you guys all came together too. But I think once we actually get like the group, it'll probably flow better.
Yeah, I think so too.
And I mean, in general, it's just like, I don't know. I just always feel like even the best ones always kind of start kind of bad from
Yeah,
from like our perspective. Like, so we'll get better. We'll get more like depth to our stuff. But yeah, hope you had fun with it at least though.
Yeah, it was good.
Okay. In that case, we'll wrap it up there for the recording. Thank you guys for watching. I really hope that you guys who are watching like this, because I'd like to keep it going, and I know that James and Nova love RP. They're Pathfinder players. So like we're all acquainted with RP, and we've all done online RPing. So once we get in the groove, bear with us. If you found it a little hard, this is just a one-on-one prologue. Once we get everyone in, it'll roll a lot better. When the story unfolds more and we have more time, it'll pick up. So if it was a little weird, bear with us, because I think it's going to be a lot of fun, and I really like the characters and I really like the setting. So thank you for watching. Hopefully we'll have Nova's up next, and then we'll get rolling with everyone. So yeah, thank you and have a great day. Bye. Say bye, James.